D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingett, and David Janes here with you. Willie, Derek, and I are live in Gallatin with the Habitat for Humanity of Sumner County. It's their third annual Playhouse project. 10 local families will receive custom-built playhouses this afternoon, built in just one day by incredible community sponsors, including our friends at Pello Windows and Doors. So we will be out here throughout the show helping out this tremendous cause. Gentlemen, how are we? How was your weekend?
Hey, weekend was wonderful, man. Sat around, did a few things. Hey, I went and got a massage, man.
Oh, that's
a
good.
Massage Saturday morning. Oh my goodness, I felt so great. I have not had one in almost a year. It's been a year. It's been over a year, man. It was.
Sometimes you gotta treat your body.
Exactly. Well, the kids got me one
for
my birthday,
okay.
like a gift certificate 3 months ago, and I'm finally just now using it. So, but beside that, man, enjoyed some of the games on television.
Some great drama over the weekend,
which we will discuss.
Took care of my dog, and because she's getting there, man. She's getting there. Few times I thought, whew, man. But yeah, she's getting to that point. She's almost 15 years old, and she's getting to that point. So anybody that has dogs and have went through that, what it's about. So now she's just relaxing in her bed. So I got to take her to the vet a little bit later today.
The Nashville Predators are out here as well. Speaking of the Predators, Barry Trotz will hold his end-of-season news conference at 12:15. We will bring that to you live. So Barry Trotz finally addressing reporters for the first time since the season ended. That is at 12:15. We will carry that for you live. But as Willie said, it was excellent theater in sports this weekend. On Saturday morning, there had been 3 teams in NHL history to overcome a third-period multi-goal deficit to win a Game 7. By last night, there were 5 because we were treated to back-to-back third-period multi-goal comeback wins in Game 7s. Starting on Saturday, the Dallas Stars down 2-0 to the Colorado Avalanche in the third period, stormed back to win in regulation 4-2. Mikko Rantanen, who of course was traded by Colorado to Carolina midseason, then traded to Dallas, had not only 4 points, 3 goals and an assist in the game. He had 3 goals and an assist in the third period. He factored onto all of Dallas's goals in the third period as the Stars eliminate the Avalanche. And then if that wasn't good enough, guys, last night, Winnipeg wins 4-3 against St. Louis in double overtime. Cole Perfetti, with 1.6 seconds left on the clock, scored what was the latest tying goal in a Game 7 in NHL history.
Ever.
It was outstanding. And I was watching the end of that game. It was 3-2 St. Louis. The time was winding down. And as it reached 3 seconds, 2 seconds, I was watching on my computer. My finger started moving the cursor towards the exit button. Fortunately, I did not click fast enough. I saw Cole Perfetti's goal. I said, whoa! And then watched the rest of the game. But absolutely compelling Game 7s, Willie, which is what we sports fans love the most.
Well, it was fantastic. The Dallas one was awesome, and it was Mikko Rantanen that did the damage against the teams that he started the season for. I mean, that's an incredible story, and it has you wondering if they could do it over again. Would Colorado have said, you know what, we're going to work this out. Let's keep Mikko Rantanen. That is their question they have to stomach now for the next 8 years, I guess, basically. So that was incredibly dramatic, but I think Winnipeg topped it. Winnipeg was dead. They were the home team. They got down early. They had a brief moment where they made it 2-1. Then they got down 3-1. It was 3-1 with 2 minutes to go. And the building, you could hear a pin drop. They kept showing the fans in the whiteout, all dressed up, decked out for Game 7, and they have this woe is me look, this, what happened, this just bewilderment. And then suddenly 2 6-on-5 goals, the second of which with less than 2 seconds to go. And remember the game last year, I hate bringing it up, but when the Predators had a lead like that slip away and lost in overtime, that could have swung the series back to them. If you could argue maybe if they had won that game, they might have had enough to win the series. But they let that one slip away. It just shows you in a hockey game, every little detail is so important. The Blues will look back and look at 4 or 5 plays where they had a chance to do something a little different, to shave off a little bit more time, or maybe score an empty net goal to put it away, and they didn't, and it cost them.
Dallas and Winnipeg will now meet in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That series starts on Wednesday. The second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs starts tonight. Florida at Toronto, game 1. Tomorrow, Carolina at Washington, Edmonton at Vegas, game 1. So the other thought that I had, Willie and Derek, as I was watching these two games, of course, all 4 of these teams are in the Central Division. And as I was watching these two games, I thought, man, these 4 teams look like they're playing a different sport than the Predators played this season. And it's a really good question about the pecking order, where the Predators are in the pecking order of the Central Division. The Winnipeg Jets, they survived, but they won the President's Trophy this season. Dallas has been to, I believe, 2 consecutive Western Conference Finals. If they defeat the Jets, it'll be 3 in a row, if I recall that correctly. St. Louis had an outstanding back half of the season to get into the playoffs, and Colorado's been there. There are going to be questions about Colorado now. They've fallen short a few times since winning the Stanley Cup in 2022. But my first thought was, man, as I said, it looks like these teams are playing a different sport.
Well, this year, that's definitely true. But I'm curious with the backdrop of this, if Barry Trotz is asked a version of that question, because I would argue that you're never that far. The Predators were last year's Blues. Is that fair to say? A huge second half run, lots and lots of momentum going into the playoffs.
I think that would be fair
only to lose in the first round to a really good team that was, look at where Vancouver has gone in a year. Same kind of idea. And as bad as they were this year, I could point. They beat Winnipeg twice. They beat Dallas twice. They beat, you're never that far. It's all playing together as a team. How do you want to play? Is everybody playing the system? The razor's edge is what's so compelling, I think, about this all the time. So I would argue that you're not as far as you think you are, and you're never as good as you think you are. I think that was the trap, D-Mace, that they fell into this year. I think they thought, hey, we were really good last year, and now we've added these other guys. This is going to be easy. And and the first month, they got hit right between the eyes because they weren't cohesive, and they dug a hole.
Yeah, when that's the potential problem that you have with teams that get on the run late in the season. They started off bad, and then late in the season with some young guys, they go on the run and they're optimistic going into the off season, and then you make splashes like you did, bringing in 3 40-goal scorers. You figure, on top of what we did last year, we're a playoff team. But you don't take into account how much time it takes for that all to gel together. You can't just throw 5 guys on the ice and say, hey, let's go win 60, 70 games. You're just not going to do that. Well, get over 100 points. You're just not going to do that. It takes time. And unfortunately for the Nashville Predators, it took a little bit too long.
Yeah, and they never really got it.
Yeah, and they never really got it. But hopefully going into off season, one thing I would love to see, and maybe they do, because I don't follow hockey like that, and especially not in the off season, really. Do they have, like, the NBA do these summer league games, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Do they have those for hockey?
They do not.
They should
have the
that.
World Championships is the only thing that's going on, really, and that's really done by the end of the Stanley Cup, right? Right around the same time.
I believe the tournament is this month, right? It starts later this week, and I think it ends by the end of the month.
Right. Because is there something?
But there's not like a developmental league.
Is there something in the CBA where, like, the team, like, y'all are playing like these, sort of like the NBA does it, where y'all
sort
play
of your
like
developmental roster.
Exactly. You're playing, and then some of your older guys can come in.
They have the prospect camp for a
Uh-huh.
week where you
Okay.
can bring in your prospects to play, but you don't play other teams.
Right.
Exactly.
You only
yeah.
play within. That's the closest thing I can think of.
And those
but that would be
prospects play in rookie tournaments closer to the start of the season. But in
Right.
terms of the veteran
summer league.
players, yeah, in
'Cause
terms of the
I
veteran
think that
players, they
would
don't
help.
have that.
But I understand the logistic is a lot of guys are going back to their countries,
right.
spending
right.
time there. But
And at some point, you got to let your body
exactly
heal.
Yeah.
I've always been curious about that with the NBA,
Uh-huh.
the summer league guys. I think of Scottie Pippen Jr. He grinded in the summer league, and some guys have made their career on that. I
Exactly.
just wonder how you keep your body because
Keep your body-
there's really no off season.
Well, I guess
for those
when you're
guys, right?
young, you can do it. But
Yeah.
as you start to get older, it's like you got to pull back. But
Yeah.
then you've established yourself, so you
Right,
don't have to plan.
it's worth it.
So that wasn't the only comeback we saw this weekend. Willie Donick, you were in attendance for Vanderbilt baseball's comeback win against Alabama.
Man, I was not in attendance yesterday, unfortunately. I was there at the first two games. Vanderbilt won. It was a big series, as we set the table for on Friday on our show. But two top 25 teams. Vanderbilt won the first game, blew it out late. Alabama came back and won the second game. It was a little chilly, so I commend all of the Vanderbilt fans and Alabama fans that toughed it out. If you went to all three of those games, you had to have a little rain gear. You had to really dig in because it was not the beautiful May weekend that you always hope for.
It was an unpleasant weather weekend.
It was,
here
yeah,
in
yeah.
Nashville,
I mean,
Tennessee.
that's a good way of putting it. So yesterday, Vanderbilt was down 7-2 in the rubber match with 2 out and nobody on. In the bottom of the 8th, Alabama is 4 outs away from a gigantic road series win to set the table in the SEC. It's just as tough as football and basketball. It is the best league by far, and it's deep. There's not much of a difference between the good teams. So if you get a road series win, it's very, very difficult to win on the road. Alabama is on the verge of doing it. Vanderbilt comes from behind and steals it 9-7 with a walk-off homer. There were about 4 or 5 pretty miraculous things that Vanderbilt had to have go right and did. So they pulled a rabbit out of the hat. And so Vanderbilt is still in the discussion, I think, for a national seed, which would be huge, which would mean you host all the way to Omaha if you keep winning. I think they have secured themselves a really good spot to at least host the regional, which they didn't last year. 2 years ago, they hosted a regional and lost. So it's been a couple years since they've made a deep postseason run, but this team is playing really well. But that was an incredible comeback. I heard, I think Clay called Joe and Chasing Big Joe last. It rained some, so there were some people when it was 7-2 in the 8th. They were like, I can't do this anymore. I got to go. Some people I know, they didn't dig in, and so they missed. They missed the comeback. Yeah.
Yes.
There also, I have to commend some of the trolls, Vanderbilt trolls. They were screaming this back and forth between the two sections. See if you can figure out what they were meaning by this. One side would yell 40. The other smart Alex, 35.
ACT
40. 35.
The score of the Vanderbilt Alabama football
Ding,
game.
ding, 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 ding. There you go.
Yes.
So Alabama's had some tough times on West End during this
I
school
didn't
year.
take the ACT. I took the SAT.
I did not
took
go
the
near
ACT.
the ACT.
Yes, I took the SAT.
Yeah.
And
And I would not
Vanderbilt-
have gotten either a 35 or a 40 on that.
And
There's no
Vanderbilt
way.
has a series at Tennessee this weekend.
Is that-
Friday,
is it
Saturday, and
this
Sunday.
weekend?
Yep.
Okay,
May
so-
9th, 10th, and 11th.
Okay. And is there one more?
They play Louisville on Tuesday.
Is there one more league series? Is there a Kentucky series to end it?
They play Kentucky after Tennessee.
Okay. So they have the Louisville game is always a fun
Uh-huh.
rivalry late in the season, good non-conference game. But at Tennessee is a hornet's nest. Tennessee's so tough. They had an interesting weekend playing Auburn there. The rain was everywhere there, and the fans were howling because they started the first game, only played about an inning, and then stopped it. It was like, why did you ever start this game? And Tennessee kind of lost their ace. He kind of got burned because they couldn't bring him back the next day. So, but Tennessee's, they're maybe not as much of a juggernaut as last year, but still extremely talented, a national contender. It's always tough to win in Knoxville. So that will be a very, very heated contest this weekend.
So as we said at 12:15, Barry Trotz will address reporters at his end-of-season news conference. We will carry that for you live. Later, we'll get into the NHL draft lottery which is tonight at 6 o'clock. Willie Donick, you will be part of our NHL Draft Lottery coverage at 6 o'clock. You'll be joined by Hal Gill and I believe Chase McCabe. Do I have that correct?
The suit. He's very versatile. He's
Yes,
going to be
he
there.
is.
Yeah.
So we will have live coverage of the NHL Draft Lottery as
Get
well.
your lucky rabbit's foot. Get your, I don't know what your good luck charm is. In fact, I would love to hear what some people
Yes, if you have
do.
good
If
luck
you've got-
charms, let me know.
Because let me just set the stage.
Uh-huh.
The Predators have never, in all of their existence, had any luck in any lottery they've been in. Going back to the very, very first year, they had a chance for the first
Number
overall
overall.
pick. They didn't get it. They dropped to 3. You know, they were the one expansion team. So they're in the lottery for the first pick that year, didn't get it. And then you can just go back. There was the lottery for Sidney Crosby, basically, where everybody had the same chance.
Uh-huh.
The Pittsburgh Penguins obviously got him. And then there was the lottery out of the bubble, Adam, you'll recall this, where if you were eliminated in the first round of
the
of
teams that did not qualify for the postseason, and the
Right.
teams that were eliminated in the qualifying,
qualifying round,
which
no.
the Predators were when they lost to the Coyotes,
Right.
they had an opportunity at the number 1 overall pick. The New York Rangers
Yes.
ultimately won
And that was one
lottery.
where everybody, regardless of your record, had an equal shot
Mhm.
at the top. They didn't win that one. So there
So he's saying it's
We
not looking
need-
good.
we need some vibe.
So if you have any
If you
good
got
luck
a suggestion,
charms,
lucky something.
Whatever you do.
615-737-1025.
11.5. They have 11.5% chance
They
of
do.
the first pick. And it's 11.2, I think, of the second pick, which would be fine.
I'll have to
I'll
go to my
take that.
favorite website, tankathon.com.
Yeah.
We will get more into the NHL Draft Lottery in a little bit, but that is tonight at 6. You can watch it on ESPN. You can listen to our coverage also
Yeah.
starting at 6 o'clock with Willie, Chase, and Hal.
And if you really want, we will really get into what Barry Trotz says today. You know, we'll talk about the team some, but we'll also talk about who are the guys. They have to. They will be no lower than 5th. They're going to have a top 5
They
pick
are guaranteed a top
somewhere
5
in there.
pick.
Yeah.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We are live in Gallatin for Habitat for Humanity of Sumner County. 10 local families will receive custom-built playhouses this afternoon, built in just one day by incredible community sponsors, including our friends at Pella Windows and Doors. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, inspired by Willie Donick, I did some research over the weekend related to Cam Ward. Because I do think that one thing that we are going to discuss and people are going to discuss over the course of the season is what could be considered a success for a rookie quarterback. Well, I did a little digging, and I think we can set the bar, and we'll do that next. Again, 615-737-1025. Nashville's best deal of the week is celebrating National Barbecue Month. Get a $50 gift card to Central Barbecue in Capitol View for half off right now. Try their new barbecue sampler, ribs, wings, and barbecue sliders. Go to thegamenashville.com/deals right now while supplies last.
would show.
First of all, Rich, we talked about him for 10 minutes before the pick because there was no mystery in who was going to be the pick. So,
Correct.
I mean, we went through and showed his highlights. I remember us, Charles and I having the discussion about Steve McNair and some of the skills that he had that were reminiscent of the great former quarterback of the Titans. So I feel like we had a good chat on him. Now we had to pivot once that trade went in, but I like the fact that they've tried to make this a little more friendly with some of the veteran offensive linemen that they added. I think they might have overpaid a little bit on Dan Moore, but it was an upgrade. They got better there. And then Zeitler comes in there. So that's a big, strong, sturdy guy that you can plug in. And then now you go into the draft and give him some other pieces to help him out. I think he's ready to go, Rich. I think you can get him on the field week 1. I think he makes them competitive. I still think the roster is a little bit leaky and there's a lot more homework to do there. But one of the things I learned about him in talking to the folks at Miami was he is one of those guys who's never had a bad day. When they could lose 3 games in a row next year in Tennessee, they said he'll be smiling in the building. He'll be able to lift everybody up. One of the other nuggets was like every time their team turned the ball over, I think was 13 times. Right after that, they had 7 touchdowns on the next drive and 3 field goals. So just a little microcosm example of somebody who's equipped to handle adversity, and you don't go from Incarnate Word to the first overall pick without being able to overcome some obstacles. So I'm excited for him. I wouldn't expect that this is a team that's going to be over 500 or be a playoff team this next year because of some of the roster limitations. But I think when you watch those matchups inside that division, talent-wise, he's going to be able to go throw for throw with C.J. Stroud and Trevor Lawrence, all those guys.
Before I go grab.
That was Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network on the Rich Eisen Show, talking Cam Ward, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So you heard Daniel Jeremiah there say, I don't expect the Titans to be a playoff team next year. I don't think anybody does. We'll see how much better the team is. But Willie, you mentioned something in passing on the show on Friday that inspired me to do some research over the weekend. I wanted to see what the average win total was for a rookie quarterback drafted number 1 overall. So between 1998 and 2024, there were 17 quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall who started at least 5 games in their rookie seasons. Again, 17 quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall between 1998, Peyton Manning, and 2024, Caleb Williams, who started at least 5 games in their rookie season. So there are 3, because I believe there have been 20 quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall since 1998. 3 of them do not qualify for this. Jamarcus Russell did not start more than 5 games in 2007. Michael Vick did not start more than 5 games in 2001. And Carson Palmer did not play at all during his rookie season in 2003. So those are the 3 quarterbacks who are excluded from this sample.
I'm trying to remember who the Bengals had.
John Kitna was their starting quarterback.
Ooh, man.
So they allowed Palmer to sit behind John
He sat
Kitna
the entire season. Kitna started every game for the Bengals the year that they drafted Carson Palmer number 1 overall. So I'm going to name you the quarterbacks who are included in this. And then, Derek and Willie, I'm going to ask you to guess the average number of wins.
Well, you sent us the data.
I did, but you may not have looked at it close enough.
Well, I definitely didn't do the math in my head, but
Okay.
I can look at the numbers.
Fair
and-
enough. Just pretend. Here are the quarterbacks that are included: Caleb Williams,
Uh-huh.
Bryce Young, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Jameis Winston, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, Sam Bradford, Matthew Stafford, Alex Smith, Eli Manning, David Carr, Tim Couch, and Peyton Manning. Those are the 17 quarterbacks who were drafted number 1 overall who started at least 5 games during their rookie season. The average number of wins of those 17.
5.5, I would say.
Willie?
Um,
Willie's going to try to do the quick math. In his
well,
head here.
I shouldn't say, but it's.
I mean, I know it's.
But I think Derek is in the ballpark.
The average number of wins is 3.9. 3.9. So let's round it up to a whole number. 4.
4.
4 wins. Yeah.
4. And there is a gigantic outlier in this. Andrew won 11 games for the Indianapolis Colts in his first season. But Willie, as we were discussing this, I mean, the Colts, unlike some of the other teams in the mix that were drafting number 1 overall, if I recall correctly, they had the 1 year they did not have Peyton Manning, right?
Right. I think there were some pretty special circumstances because the Peyton Manning era,
Uh-huh.
they were, as everybody remembers, a consistent contender, double-digit wins every year. And then Peyton Manning had the very unusual neck injury that really threatened his career. He sat out a whole year, but they had the roster that was, pretty good. And then Curtis Painter and, a bunch of guys like that were quarterbacking for them.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
dipped to 2-14. They hit it big, got the first pick, and happened to have Andrew Luck as the first pick. So Andrew Luck was awesome the first year. For a rookie, he was outstanding. But they still had they had the makings. I'd have to look back at all the particular pieces.
They still had Reggie Wayne.
Yeah.
They still had Pierre Garçon.
Pierre Garçon
Pierre
was pretty
Garçon.
good.
Yes.
The tight end, it was
Dallas
Dallas Clark was
was
still
still there.
there.
Was
Yeah.
he still there?
Yes.
Golly.
Dallas Clark was still there. Here are the 3 quarterbacks who
Was
started.
Jeff Saturday still there?
I'll have to check. But here are the 3 quarterbacks who started games for the Colts that season. Curtis Painter, 0-8. Dan Orlovsky, 2-3. Kerry Collins, 0-3.
Wow, Dan Orlovsky.
So Dan
Better
Orlovsky,
better record.
one of his wins was against the Titans.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at this list,
Uh-huh.
and rightly or wrongly, Cam Ward, his success this season is going to be judged by how many wins the Titans have, because for a lot of people, wins are a quarterback stat, and we can argue whether that's the right way to go about it.
Uh-huh.
But for a lot of people, especially those of us who are outside of Nashville, who are going to be not watching the Titans every week, like we are going to be watching the Titans every week, though, they might check in every once in a while and go, oh, the Titans are 3-11 with Cam Ward. He must not be doing very well. But again, the average number of wins by the 17 quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall who started at least 5 games in their rookie seasons is 3.9. So again, rounded up to 4.
And you could keep going back
You could.
to some other ones that I don't think the number is going to change much. Like
No.
Troy Aikman famously won 1,
Yeah.
I think. Drew Bledsoe is in there. I don't think they won a whole lot his first year. So they're going to struggle. They are going to struggle. We also look at the Titans roster. We're not seeing a bounce back kind of team. They are in a huge rebuild, still trying to get out of the black hole of the 3 empty drafts that Rand Carthon inherited. So it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. And so that ought to tell you it's about more survival. It's about building blocks. It's about trying to get a foundation. Peyton Manning, 3-13 his first year, I
Yes.
think led the league in interceptions, but he survived. They picked really high the next year. They picked, I don't know if they had the first. I don't think they had the first, second or third pick. Edgerrin James was the guy they added the next year. They traded Marshall Faulk, right?
Mhm.
If I got that right, they traded
so.
Marshall Faulk
Yeah.
to the Rams and got more picks, and all of a sudden, instantly, the Peyton Manning era started, right? So that's where you have to try to think for this coming year. I don't think it should be about, well, they've got to win a certain amount of games or Brian Callahan's going to be out of there and they're the scapegoat. You have to think long term. This is a 2 or 3 year plan at least.
Well, I believe if they see some progression in development in a quarterback, that's all you truly can go by, because your team around him isn't that good. Now, looking at these teams, and I kind of condensed in just a little bit more. I went the last 9 years, 10 years of number one quarterbacks, and I wanted to see what tangible things, sort of contributed to a quarterback winning and losing. And we automatically think, well, he didn't have the receivers, he didn't know the offensive line. But what I found is they didn't have a defense. Their scoring defense was horrible. They were, I think, the team that had the best scoring defense, but still had a losing record, was the it was either Cleveland or Cincinnati, where their defense, no, as a matter of fact, it was Carolina. They ranked fourth in total defense, but they had a horrible record. When you have a defense, but they also gave up 20-some points.
Are you talking about the Cam Newton?
No, I'm talking about the Bryce Young. I'm talking about
so
Bryce
their
Young.
defense was decent with their Bryce Young?
Like a total defense,
Yeah.
they were fourth total defense.
Fourth.
Yeah,
Wow.
fourth overall. But
And they still only won.
they
2
gave
games?
up 24 points a game, and they were -9 in turnover ratio.
Mm.
If your
D-Mace
defense,
has the scrolls, by the way, back. If you're watching on the YouTube, he is dug deep into this. I'm impressed. I'm very
well,
impressed.
thank you.
I don't
Willie.
have my scrolls today. What is I should be keeping? I'm not keeping up.
Sometimes I forget what my handwriting looks like because I don't write with a pen or a pencil very often. I'm typing things out.
But that's one thing, and so I'm not surprised what the Titans did in the draft, where I thought they should have went pass catcher in the second round, but they went defense and defense again, because they understand if we can get a defense that can rank in the top half, most importantly, defense that is getting turnovers and defense that is holding teams, we may not average 20 points a game, but if we're not giving up 20 points a game, that puts us in a better. Now I get to manage my quarterback. Now I get to sit back and say, okay, I can run the football. Why? Because I don't feel I have to score on every down. And this guy wasn't the first pick in the draft, but why do you think Joe Flacco had so much success, like record-wise? Damn good defense. So they were able to bring him along slowly. We ran the football and we threw Jimmy on third down, but we spread it to a lot of other guys too. But our focus was play good defense, run the football, and we'll bring the passing game into it. But in order for, I think, what tremendously helps the young quarterback, and especially a guy like Cam Ward, you have to have a defense. If you have no defense, you have no chance.
Even looking at this list, again, Andrew Luck is the outlier. He went 11-5 as the starter for the Indianapolis Colts in 2012. He is the only one on this list who won more games than he lost. Some came close. For example, Baker Mayfield in 2018 with the Browns went 6-7. Keep in mind that the Browns the previous year won 0 games
What
before
year
draft.
was Andrew Luck again?
2012.
12.
2012. But Bryce Young, 2-14. Trevor Lawrence, 3-14. Joe Burrow, 2-7-1. He was injured during that rookie season. Kyler Murray, 5-10-1. Baker Mayfield, 6-7. Jared Goff, 0-7. Jameis Winston, 6-10. Luck, 11-5. Newton, 6-10. Bradford, 7-9.
Bradford, that's an odd one to me. The Bradford 7-9, and that's a Jeff Fisher coach team. We should ask him about that year to have the first overall pick. And Sam Bradford, I don't know if that probably was not his best year, but that would seem so promising.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know Sam Bradford had a lot of injury issues that kind of derailed any chance of him being a great quarterback. He was.
Stafford 2-8, Alex Smith 2-5, Eli Manning 1-6, David Carr 4-12, Tim Couch 2-12, Peyton Manning 3-13.
And the Eli Manning he was drafted by the Chargers.
Yes.
That had the first pick.
Traded to the Giants.
And
they
had
1-6.
And they had Kurt Warner. That was a mess, kind of, right? That was a little bit of an issue there, trying to figure out when it was time to put Eli in. But what was interesting about that is the Chargers traded down and made the playoffs that year. Even though they drafted Phillip Rivers with the pick, they already had Drew Brees, and they made the playoffs with Drew Brees as the quarterback. That was an interesting team to follow there.
Quickly,
Yep.
quickly, take
Yep.
a guess. In that year,
Which year?
with Indianapolis, 2012, when they drafted Andrew Luck and they had a good season.
Yeah.
Guess what their turnover ratio was? I mean,
The Colts.
well, nope. Let me see. Let me get back to that one. I'm gonna give it to you, but let me get back to. I thought I did
All right.
have
Well,
it, but I
you,
something
you
else I
think
gotta
about
get
it.
to
We'll
Yeah.
go to break. 6
We agree that that was a sort of special circumstances
Mhm.
for the Colts.
Those are
to-
unreasonable
to have the
expectations.
environment where
Yes.
a really good rookie quarterback, perfect storm,
Yes.
rookie quarterback who was considered off the
He
charts.
was the G word. He was the actual definition of the
Yes.
G word.
And you had the remnants of a winning program behind him.
615-737-1025. What is your barometer for success for Cam Ward and the Titans in year one with Cam Ward? 615-737-1025. Coming up next, I also looked at the win differential for all of these teams with the number one drafted quarterbacks, and I will share what I found there as well. Again, 615-737-1025. Let me tell all of you about the 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament benefiting Folds of Honor, presented by Gary Force Acura at Hermitage Golf Course. It's Thursday, May 29th. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com.
Happy Monday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting some type of resolution or goal to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. But we got some solutions here, and we got the answers to everything you need to know. Because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We are live at the Habitat for Humanity of Sumner County, the third annual Playhouse Project. 10 local families will receive custom-built playhouses this afternoon, built in just one day by incredible community sponsors, including our friends at Pella Windows and Doors. So talking about Cam Ward and how many wins he can reasonably add to the Titans win total. Again, I looked up the 17 quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall who started at least 5 games in their rookie seasons. There were 17 of them. The average win total was around 4.
Mhm.
What I also decided to do was look back at the team's win total the year before those rookie quarterbacks came in.
Ah,
And I wanted to see how many wins those teams added the next year with that rookie quarterback. Would you care to take a guess what the average win differential was?
3 again.
Yeah, I'm going to say that it's not that different. I think they're probably sliding down. So I'm going to say it's 4.5.
2.1.
2.1.
Ah.
2.1. And keep in mind, some of these quarterbacks did not play in every game.
Well, I guess it has to be 2.1 because they got the first pick.
Right.
Right.
Right. So not
I
all of
wasn't
these-
thinking. I was thinking the year before the year you're talking about.
So
Okay.
for example, Caleb Williams, the Browns won 7 games the year before he was drafted, but they had the Panthers pick
Yeah.
at
Yes.
number 1. They won 5 games with Caleb Williams. So that was a -2 win differential. Same thing reversed with Carolina.
Mhm.
Carolina had 7 wins. They traded up with the Bears to take Bryce Young. They won 2 games with Bryce Young for a win differential of -5. But Trevor Lawrence helped add 2 wins. Joe Burrow helped add 2 wins. Kyler Murray helped add 2 wins. The 2 biggest ones here, Andrew Luck obviously helped add 9 wins to the Colts total. Baker Mayfield helped add 7 wins to the Browns total, but the Browns won 0 games
Yeah.
the year before. Sam Bradford added 6 wins, helped add 6 wins to the Rams total in 2010. But the average is 2.13. Also keep in mind that 2 of the quarterbacks on this list, David Carr and Tim Couch, their teams did not exist the year before because the
Expansion,
Browns
yeah.
and the
Yeah.
Texans were part of expansion. So Caleb Williams, -2. Bryce Young, -5. Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, and Kyler Murray, +2. Baker Mayfield, +7. Jared Goff, -3. Jameis Winston, +4. Luck, +9. Newton, +4. Bradford, +6. Stafford, Smith, and Manning, Eli Manning, +2. Peyton Manning, 0.
Okay, so that leads me to this question, D-Mace.
Yes.
That first year, when you're starting, you had the first pick, so your team was bad the year before or did not exist the year before.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And we see what the track record is, any range other than Andrew Luck from about 0 to, the average being 3.9, I think is what you said, right?
So the average win total
Wins
was
was
3.9.
3.9.
The average team win differential
2.1.
was plus
Right.
2.1.
What's better? I would argue that you're almost better winning about the same amount of games and picking high the next year. I would love to track some of these quarterbacks. I remember Peyton Manning's, right? They got Edgerrin James the next year, and I remember this because they played D. Mace's Titans in 1999 in the divisional
Yes.
battle, and it was the Eddie George long run, and they won in Indy on their way to the Super Bowl. So they got really good fast. And part of the reason was they picked high again after Peyton Manning's rookie year. So it's almost good to have another load of high picks.
Well, there
Dude,
are 2
that's
examples.
what I would argue
There
anyway.
are 2 examples in recent history of teams. Well, actually, just one here. Remember, so Trevor Lawrence, first pick in 2021. The Jaguars had the top pick the following draft in 2022. Took Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall in 2022. The Browns sort of did it the other way. Myles Garrett was the number 1 pick in 2017. Then they had Baker Mayfield as the number 1 pick in 2018.
So they picked first overall 2 years in a row.
The Browns did in 2017 and 18. The Jaguars did in 2021 and 2022.
And the Browns eventually did have some success in there. They did have a year where they went to the playoffs with Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett. So unfortunately, they didn't really sustain it. And some of these franchises are notoriously unable to have a string of success. Jaguars would be in that category as well, right?
So the way I read this is just based on the averages of the other number one overall pick quarterbacks in their rookie seasons. The Titans won 3 games last season?
Yeah.
If the Titans win 5 compared to what we've seen in recent history, that's on par with what we've seen.
Right. But is that good? Would you almost rather have the two extra losses and pick in the top 3 again next year? What's the quicker way?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because history would tell you. I think Burrow's teams would be in this category as well. You pick high again. Was it Jamar Chase they had the year after? Am I remembering that right?
I'll double check, but that sounds correct.
Mhm.
Let me see here.
Yeah, they picked Jamar.
Yes,
Chase.
you're
Yeah,
correct.
Cincinnati. Yeah, I think that's right. Thank you.
So,
Dave.
there's another example. You get like Edgerrin James was that guy for Peyton Manning. A very, very big help, right? Especially because they then were able to trade. I'd have to go back and look and see what they got for Marshall Faulk, but that wasn't nothing, right? Marshall Faulk was incredible
No, yeah,
that
you're right.
year in '99, and so was James. But you're trying to build a roster. It's not necessarily how many games you win, whether it's 3 or 5. In fact, just taking it when you're in the moment, you want to win,
Yeah.
right? That's the problem. But from a 10,000-foot view, you're better off picking high again.
Marshall Faulk was traded by the Colts to the Rams for a 1999 second-round pick, 36th overall, and a 1999 fifth-round pick, a 138th overall.
Pretty good trade for the Rams, I would say,
Yeah, it was.
to get a guy like that guy.
Yeah, I mean it was. Whether you pick high or in the middle of the draft, because even that Cincinnati team, I think, had Joe Burrow played the whole season, because he got hurt and missed I think a big chunk of the season, his rookie year. That win total could have been even more if he was underneath center. So I think as long as you have your guy underneath center, whether you have another high pick or not, you still can build around him, because that's what teams want. They want that high pick to draft that quarterback, and then subsequently after that, you don't want to be picking in a top 3 or 4. 1, somebody's going to lose their job, and then 2, the quarterback's not going to develop. Why? Because the coaching staff has changed, the offensive coordinator has changed.
I stumbled across an article written last year by Aaron Schatz for ESPN.com looking at the best supporting casts for top pick quarterbacks. And his formula landed on Caleb Williams. Think about, on paper, entering last season, the weapons that Caleb Williams had at his disposal. He had DJ Moore. He had Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift in the backfield. He was productive for the Eagles. Cole Kmet at tight end. Like, the environment seemed great for him to have success.
Well,
and a
on
team
offense.
that had been picking pretty high the previous few years. It looked like they were a trendy pick, right?
Right.
To be really good right away.
But
only won
the
5
fact
games.
The fact remains they didn't have a defense. They were at the lower half in total defense. They were +8 in total turnovers. I think the year prior, didn't they trade away both of their defenses? They traded away one of them and then didn't re-sign the other. So that's why I think it looked the way it looked. Why? Because they couldn't stop anyone, but also they couldn't score points, no matter who they had on offense. And then you can go back to their offensive line too. So just because you have the skill players, because I looked at that list and they chronicled all the skill players on that list, which, I mean, if you look at it per person, it's like, well, okay, that team should have a good offense, but they didn't give us what their defense looked like.
Right. And also the Keenan Allen, that's a classic example of you get a guy who is a really decorated guy who's played really well, but maybe is a little
kind of like Tyler Lockett, perhaps
long in the tooth. Well, let's hope Lockett is the outlier, but the expectation level, I think, is probably a little lower for Lockett than Keenan Allen was, where he was hyped up. But the Bears have very rarely gotten it right for a long time. So I think it was sound thinking, but they all, we should say this about the Bears. Packers, Lions, Vikings. That was a tough division.
Oh my.
Right? That was not an easy division. Like 5 and 12, if they were playing in a different division, might have ended up being a couple extra wins. But the fact remains, it's nearly impossible to win the first year with a rookie quarterback, even if that quarterback was picked number 1. That is what we take away from
Yes. 615-737-1025. If you have thoughts on that, you can call us, you can text us. 615-737-1025. Barry Trotz, Predators GM, is expected to address reporters at 12:15. We will bring that to you live. But before we hear from Barry, a bit of an NFL draft, a bit of an NHL draft lottery primer for you. We'll do that next, leading into Barry Trotz again at 12:15. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D-Mace Fingen and Donick 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you live at Habitat for Humanity of Sumner County. We are in Gallatin for the 3rd annual Playhouse Project. Happy to be out here as a lot of excellent organizations, including our friends at Pella Windows and Doors and the Nashville Predators are out here. Speaking of the Predators, Barry Trotz expected to address reporters in roughly 15 minutes. We will bring that to you live. But also tonight, the NHL Draft Lottery. It starts at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN. You can also listen to our coverage starting at the same time, starring Chase McCabe, Willie Donick, and Hal Gill. I thought this was interesting, gentlemen. For the first time in its 30-year history, the Draft Lottery will feature the drawing live in studio, allowing viewers to follow along and learn the results in real time. So for all of you conspiracy theorists out there, that is happening as part of the NHL Draft Lottery. The rules are a bit complex, so we'll just boil it down to the basics. The Predators, because they had the 3rd worst record in the NHL, have an 11.5% chance of moving up 2 spots in winning the Draft Lottery and having the number 1 overall pick in the NHL Draft, which is taking place late next month. And just in case you were curious, 2 years ago, the Chicago Blackhawks had an 11.5% chance of winning the lottery. They moved up from 3rd to 1st and selected Connor Bedard.
What is the top team? What is their percentage?
The top team, the San Jose Sharks, have
25.5%.
Oh,
have a 25.5% chance.
a little over double.
Yes. So the Predators, by the way, can fall no further than 5th, which means the Predators are guaranteed a top 5 pick, but you don't want to be picking 5th. You hope that the Predators can move up to either 1st, of course, or 2nd. So, Willie, the question I think a lot of Predators fans are going to have, and you're going to talk about this as well more in depth later tonight with Chase McCabe and Hal Gill. If the Predators, who have an 11.5% chance of nabbing the number 1 pick, if that happens, if it comes true, and the Predators, like the Titans, have the number 1 overall pick in the draft, by my research, because I am not a draft prospect expert, the number 1 player in this draft, Matthew Schaefer, is a defenseman. There are some highly talented centers, Michael Misa and James Higgins, but the top player in the draft is a defenseman. So if the Predators have the number 1 overall pick, there are going to be Predators fans screaming that they use it on a center. But the question remains, do you just take the best player available regardless of position? We've had the same conversation with the Titans. Or do you try to fill a glaring need at center if you're the Predators? So they also need defensemen too. Let's not mistake anything there.
I also do not pretend to have watched any of these guys. Remember, these kids, and they are kids, are around 18 years old, give or take a few months. Some will not even have turned 18.
Yeah.
So you're trying to project a kid. These are like it's a little bit more like the best high school players in the country when it comes to basketball, when it comes to baseball. It's like it's more of recruiting for college kind of age.
Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, who is considered the top prospect in this draft, will not turn 18 until September.
Wow. So he will barely be 18 when his rookie season starts.
Correct.
In theory, if he's ready to play in the NHL. So that being said, if he's clearly ahead of everybody else, I think you definitely take the best player, and regardless of position. I would take Schaefer. And let's not act like the Predators are very, very deep right now in their organization at defense. In fact, you could argue they're thinner long-term on defense than they are at forward, because they've spent the last few years really trying to address depth at forward and trying to find the coveted number 1 center. Now, if it's not Schaefer as the first pick, the next few guys are probably centers, but they might be just graded a little bit lower than Schaefer.
So the Predators have an 11.5% chance. This is according to my favorite website, Tankathon.com. The Predators have an 11.5% chance of picking first, an 11.2% chance of picking second, a 7.8% of staying at third, a 39.7% chance of falling to fourth, and a 29.8% chance of falling to 5th, according to Tankathon.com.
And that really shocked me. Again, I show my weakness in knowing about math, but when I saw that, I was like, wow, they've got a much bigger chance of slipping down a notch or two than they do moving up a notch or two. And that's because they put all of the teams that didn't make the playoffs in there with a little bit of a chance. And you add all that up, and that's why there's a chance that Nashville could bump down from 3 to 4 or 5. So I would consider it a win if they just stay at 3, even though that's the least probable of all of the outcomes. Because I think the top 3, they'll get somebody that they really, really like. If they slip to 4 or 5, I think there's going to be a little bit more of a tougher decision on who to pick, even though it's still going to be a top 5 pick. Keep in mind, they've only picked once in the top 5 since the very, very first year where they were guaranteed to pick that high because they were an expansion team.
Seth Jones, number 4 overall in 2013. By the way, I just did on Tankathon.com. You can sim the lottery. I just did it. Predators fans, you might want to cover at least part of your ears for this. I want you to hear it. So cover
4.
part of your ears. 5th, with the Boston Bruins jumping 4 spots to nab the number 1 overall pick. That would be a co-conspiracy for a lot of people if the Boston Bruins jumped up. This lottery sim had the Bruins moving up 4 spots to number 1, the Sabres moving up 5 spots to number 2, San Jose moving down 2 spots to number 3, Chicago moving down 2 spots to number 4, the Predators moving down 2 spots to number 5. So that's worst case scenario.
You know what
with
I would
that
do?
lottery sim.
I just click that sim again.
All right, want me to do it one more time?
Until you get number 1.
All right, I'm going to do it one more time. The Blackhawks move up 1 spot to take the number 1 overall pick. San Jose moves down 1 spot to 2. The Predators stay at 3. That was my other sim.
Okay.
All right, that's good.
All right, for kicks and giggles, let's do one
more time.
One more time.
This time, rub your Barry Trotz bobblehead.
Yes.
He already
before
clicked
you do it.
He already
All right,
clicked it.
so this one, San Jose stays at 1. Buffalo moves up 5 spots to 2. Chicago down 1 to 3. Nashville down 1 to 4. Philadelphia down 1 to 5.
So if you add it up, there is almost a 70% chance that Nashville picks 4 or 5. That's the reality of it. And so, it's more probable that that's going to happen. So we have to set our expectations that way. But I'll be really ticked off if they pick 5th. I'm sure I'll be like, what? How does that happen? This isn't fair.
Again, the drawing
It's a conspiracy.
The drawing is being done live in studio for the first time. Usually it's done before the broadcast starts in a back room. Who knows what goes on back there? That's why there's the conspiracy. But it's being done in front of the live studio audience this time for the first time ever. That is at 6 o'clock. You can watch it on ESPN. You can listen to our coverage also at 6 o'clock, starring Chase McCabe, Willie Donick, and Hal Gill. 615-737-1025. Barry Trotz, Predators GM, expected to start his news conference in just a matter of minutes. We're going to go to break, and we will be back with Barry Trotz. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick Barry Trotz about to start his news conference. We take you there live.
He's going to open with some remarks. Then we'll turn over to questions. Please wait for me or Katie to get you the mic. We will do our best to get you the mic as efficiently as possible within the time constraints we have here. So without further ado, Barry Trotz.
Hello, everyone. First of all, on behalf of the Predators, I want to thank you for your patience and also your coverage this year. Obviously, that's a big part of what we do. Last year, we talked about number one thing was a plan. Last year, obviously, last training camp, we were pretty enthused with our additions. July 1, we wanted to be a threat in a National Hockey League, be in that mix. Unfortunately, the season did not live up to our expectations, either our own internal expectations or external expectations. I think I was the one that said it's fantasy hockey until we become a good team. I think I was correct a little bit on that because we didn't become a good team. Unfortunately, we wanted to be to thread the needle, if you will, bring in accomplished veterans that we could mix in with our younger talent. We worked really hard to acquire those players, and that plan still is in place. That hasn't changed. That's the one part that hasn't changed. The path hasn't changed, or the path has changed, or our plan hasn't. The path is, our timeline has been moved up, if you will. Our hope was to add a piece or two if we were in that playoff mix. Obviously, we weren't, so we were not. So we moved up our timeline with some of our younger players. That's where you saw the Svechkovs and the Leroux and a number of those players. Instead, we had franchise record 7 NHL debuts this year. Comparison to the year previous, we only had 1 that had our debut. So, we tried to give our young guys experience. For me, the future is really bright with our young players in the organization. I think I've been very clear from the onset on defense, guys like Molendyk and Gibson and Ufko up front, guys like Schaefer, Kemmel, Wood, Edstrom, Surin, Stiga, O'Hara, Fink. You've heard all those names either through their college careers or their junior careers or even in Milwaukee. You got to see some of them in the National Hockey League making their debuts this year. And in terms of draft capital, going forward this year, we've got 3 first-round picks for the first time in our franchise history. We have 4 in our top 35 picks. We should add to a pretty good pool of draft choices that we already have in the process of developing. So we should hopefully with our this week, our scouts are in for meetings that we should add to a fairly deep playoff pool or a prospect pool. I'm excited about the possibilities in the draft. I mean, regardless of the outcome of the lottery, which is pretty exciting tonight, we know we'll have a top 5 pick at least. And with any help with the rabbit's feet and all the other things that we got going on, hopefully it's a little higher than that. But we're excited about that because you're going to get a top player to that really strong pool of prospects and deep. And then the lottery, depending on what happens on the lottery, will probably dictate what we do in the draft in terms of the direction that we have. You look at our next 3 drafts, we got 5 first-round picks, 5 second-round picks, 4 third-round picks in our next 3 drafts. Overall, we got 28 picks in the next 3 drafts. That's a lot. And if you look at our depth charts and your 3-year, 4-year plans, there's a lot of young talent coming this way. I've asked our scouts to take their swing again, so they're going to do that. We're going to take our swings and add to that draft capital. In addition to the draft capital, got lots of moves we can make this year. We made lots of moves, I should say, this year in November. Really, where it started, we gave us some capital. It gave us roster flexibility. Going forward, we're also getting into we get 2 retention spots back. So some of the work that when we felt that wasn't going to happen for us, we started, giving a path to some of these young guys, having the plan going. Like I say, the timeline just moved up more than anything. The biggest question: what went wrong? That's what you guys, everybody here. I'm asking the same question. We were excited in July 1, all the acquisitions. I don't regret anything that we did. We had to replace Ryan McDonough. We did that with Brady Shea. We felt we had to add a few more veteran players. You saw in the playoffs we didn't have a lot of offense. We tried to add some offensive players. Obviously, knowing that we're trying to, acquire some centers, young centers. We got Edstrom and Svechkov coming. You've got, there wasn't someone out there that we could get signed in free agency that was going to fill that bill, 8 years from now. There wasn't anybody out there. So our thought was, let's make sure that we surround them with a little bit more offense. We've got serial winners, which I've been very clear on. I think it's really important to have those guys that can play a few positions. Like Stammer, for instance, is a good example. We knew we could start him on the wing. If it didn't happen, if we weren't ready with our guys there, he could go back in the middle for a year or two. Then he can move back. You could do that. You could do that with O'Reilly. I've had O'Reilly a number of tournaments with Hockey Canada, what have you. He's a guy that can obviously play center and he can slide over to the wing, depending on where they are, where your team's at. So that was the thought process on that. And we have a little gap. We had a gap of older players, and we have a lot of young players, but that gap was in that, let's say, the a little bit older veteran type guys that. So we tried to fill a lot of those type of things. What happened at the start, to me, we got good players, we got good people. We didn't miss on that at all. Okay. Expectations are very high. There is some, I'll say, a weight with those expectations. I think the expectations probably were a little bit unrealistic. And I sort of tried to say that, but everybody was really excited, and I understand why. But the reality is that we got off to a poor start. Some of those acquisitions, I want to say, in our leadership, sort of paralyzed each other a little bit. They looked at each other with admiration. Guys looking at Steven Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea and going, "Hey, those are really good players," and we're, and our guys are on the flip side, Stammer and those guys, the respect they have for Yos and O'Reilly and that. And I think we got paralyzed a little bit waiting for, where do I fit? How's it going to happen? And I think I sort of mentioned that with legacy players, it does take longer, and the respect that those players have for each other says a lot. A lot of people question how our dressing room was. We've got great guys in our dressing room. They really get along really well. I would say they have a really good dressing room. We have really good guys, and sometimes maybe too nice. Sometimes you don't want to step on each other's toes. So we've had that conversation a little bit. And then obviously I think that we caused that slow start, which really put us in a tough spot. The slow start, which hurt our confidence as a group. Been there, done that as a, when you're on the bench, that it does. More importantly, it affects your buy-in. If you don't get off to a good start, you start to question yourself a little bit. I think it hurt our buy-in, and when your buy-in gets questioned a little bit because you don't have a great start, the trust, the consistency, your identity, resiliency, your mental fortitude of fighting through stuff and trusting the process is not quite there. The ability to confront or get comfortable when it's uncomfortable, and then confront each other to pull it together sometimes. The ability to find ways to win games. I thought in that early part of the season, we found more ways to lose games than we did to win games as we did the year before. We found ways to win. Even if we didn't have our best, we found ways to win. This year, even we had our best, we found a way to lose a game. I can, the one that sticks out is the Philly game. I thought that was as close to a perfect game as you can imagine, and we ended up losing the game. And I just found that those type of things happened to us, and it really affected our confidence. Some of the red flags, and when you talk about buy-in, red flags I always look for, offensive zone penalties by some of our key guys at key moments, inability to control momentum by doing things to kill it, giving up a quick goal right after we score one, early goals in periods, late goals in periods, game management stuff, with the puck in those crucial moments. Too many men on the ice penalties, I think, which I felt like we led the league in that this year. And it, to me, was just sometimes indicators of a couple of things, a little bit of indicators of trust, a little bit of indicators of focus, and indicators of commitment, because you're sort of not paying attention all the time. So we lacked those. Those were things that we lacked a little bit this year collectively. And anybody knows, too many men on the ice penalties are, usually it's watching your guy come to the bench and you step on the ice knowing where the puck is, those type of things. So to me, those were things that got into our game that helped us lose games, not help us, in any other way. So we were too reliant on our special teams for goals. Our 5-on-5 play was not good enough. I don't think, at times we played to score versus playing to win. And it's a fine line. Guys know what I'm talking about. We relied on, the special situations rather than, outplaying the other team and worrying about the process, and if you do that, you become very comfortable in close games. You get comfortable in all those things. And it's a lot of the things we did this year. We chased the game. And when you chase the game, you get away from a little bit of your structure. You get away from detail where you're trying to cheat for offense, those type of things. So it really played into the buy-in a little bit, if you will. Later in the year, after, I would say, around Christmas time, January 1, injuries, trades that I made, it was hard for sometimes the group to get some traction. I'd make a deal that might give us a step back in terms of getting a younger player for older player, with the upside being in the end goal. And then we'd have 3 or 4 injuries, and it piled on. It made it more difficult for the group to have some success timing wise sometimes. But you can't control some of that stuff. I remember this year a few times where we were about to do something and someone would get hurt, and we seemed to get hurt on defense. All our defense would go at the same time. All that said, we accomplished a couple things through the year. You always look for the positives. We added some young veterans to our group. We added draft assets and cap space, which are valuable quantities to have. And we added opportunity and a path for our young players. And let's not forget, over the course of time, we were expecting to have pain along this path. Everybody says, hey, we've got to do this. We haven't had too many high draft choices. It's time. And we're trying to thread the needle, doing what Washington was able to pull off this last year and a half or whatever. They stayed pretty healthy for the most part, other, I think, than Backstrom. And Backstrom and Oshie were 2 big pieces that they were able to fill with their team. And they threaded the needle much better than we did. All said, the culture that we created, I think over time, is still good. It's still a good culture here. We practiced hard. We played hard. I would say towards the end of the year, our roster was pretty thin. And that was a little bit of design, a little bit of injury. that made it fairly thin at the end of the year. It was tough to win, but I think it did slip a little bit. It slipped early, trying to make everybody fit in. The players that we acquired they're part of the solution, not part of the problem. They're part of the solution, and I think I had mentioned to you that they wanted to. I talked to them at the trade deadline, and they were all in. I think they were all take a step back, and maybe this year wasn't the year that we all expected. I think you'll have a much more determined group. I think that you'll have the buy-in of the group because they have to rely on each other going forward. So we just got to tighten that up a little bit. I just think that, when you have a really good culture, when it slips a little bit, you just got to make sure that we have really good clarity and consequences if there's anything that slips there. So that is part of the process of what we're talking about. I'm pretty clear on talking with our coaches, talking with our players that there's a couple of things that we will be much better at. I really believe that and I will make it clear as well, is that we will be better defensively. We'll play better 5-on-5. We will need to everybody will need to step up. I'll say a lot of stuff was maybe directed at our older players last year, that they got to step up. They got to step up. But we also need more production from our younger guys. They need to step up as well. But this is part of the process, and coaches and management as well. We all do. I don't think we are happy with where we ended up this year. There's a curse and a blessing. I say that the curse is we didn't have the year that we expected. It was difficult. Mentally, it was difficult for the players, everybody involved. We haven't been here before for a long time. I've been here a long time ago, but we haven't. You haven't, because for a long time this franchise has been, in the playoffs, and I think we recognize that, we have to turn it a little bit. We've got to get younger. We want to get a little faster. We want to do a lot of different things, but our older players, Roman Josi, can't play forever. So we have to create our new core, our young core, exciting core, and we're ahead of the game in a lot of areas, because I look back at last year. Our record wasn't where it was. There was a stretch of 11 games. I think we had points in 8 or 9 of them, but we didn't win any of them. And that stretch right there, just it was a good example of how the season is. You're playing good hockey. You're in every game. You're in overtime and you lose, and you end up losing maybe some ground, and that's mentally really hard. When we had a stretch where if we would have won some of those, we'd been right in the mix, and how things carry. And I know I'll take a swing if we get close. I may add to that group, but we never really got to a point where I felt comfortable that I'm going to expend assets and double down on our future. When it didn't, you look at some of the teams, they were hitting on all cylinders. I didn't think that was the right move for us at this time, but I will when it's our time. And this year it wasn't our time. So, the other question that is on everybody's mind is coaching staff. Andrew Brunette, what's happening with Andrew Brunette? Andrew Brunette, to me, is a good young coach. That's why I hired him. He's a good young coach that had a tough situation this year in terms of our team, maybe our makeup, how we came together or didn't come together. Right at the start of the year. And he needs to add a lot of tools to his tool belt. I think I was that guy. I was Andrew Brunette way back when, in terms of I thought I had a lot of tools in my tool belt, and you find out you have to add a couple more. I think he did add some during the year. I think he's going to add some at the World Championships this year. He's part of the Canadian staff. Good young people when you believe in them. just like a good young player, you stick with them. And Andrew Burnett is just like a young player. We could have did the easy thing, make a change and see if we can get a bump up, whatever. I didn't do that. I believe in developing people. I believe he's a good young coach. He's a good young hockey mind, and Andrew's going to work hard to find a solution. He's a solution-based guy, as well as myself. We'll find that solution, and they've met with the players, the leadership group, and he will continue to do that. He'll make adjustments in terms of, everybody asks us, is the right system, all that. We've looked at everybody's system. We looked at the trends. The staff has given me a outline of every team, of what everybody's doing. I watch on my own. I watch lately as a scout because we're getting into the draft. I also watch what's working in the playoffs for the teams that are there, and there's some good teams. So there will be changes. They will make those adjustments. That's what a good young hockey mind does, and Andrew will do that. I didn't want to enable players or management to think it's okay not to fight through hard times. Anybody who knows me, the easy solution for anything, and you see it all the time. I know some of the gentlemen, obviously, they're losing their jobs around the National Hockey League. They're good coaches. But I think sometimes it is too much of a crutch around the league a little bit. If you got a good coach and you believe in your coach, then stand behind your coach. And so we're standing behind Andrew, and in that, it's an easy way out for players and management. Quite frankly, I've always felt that way. That doesn't change. But you got to get the job done. I will have to get it done. Andrew will have to get it done. The players will have to get it done. So the buy-in has to come in 3 levels. It has to come from players, coach, management. We've got to be on the same page, that the buy-in's all there, and the adjustments are all there and all that. So I would say that it felt like we were on the same page, but it didn't come together quick enough for us last year. But we'll make sure that it does this year. I always believe in obviously putting your spine into it and make it better. That's sort of my message to the coaches. We've had some hard talks to the players. I had not only one meeting with players, I had multiple meetings with a couple of players on that to make sure that we're clear. We need to demand more from our key people, our staff, everybody, our team. Just demand more. We've got more to give in those areas. I will say is Andrew's going to be our head coach, and we will make some adjustments, or he will make some adjustments. I'm sure in terms of how we play. Obviously, talking with the players and getting some of their input is always critical. I think the one thing that Andrew is very clear on, and I think is clear around the league, is that you're in a partnership with your players. It's not a dictatorship, but you're in a partnership. The partnership is every coach has to make every player better, but the player has a responsibility to make himself better as well with the advice that he's gotten, and grow his game within the framework of our game. Everybody's an individual contractor, if you will, but you got to be on the same map, and you got to have the same buy-in to have something great. So that's got to be, to me, that's a key for success as a coach in the National Hockey League. In terms of our roster, very exciting. I'm excited about our young guys. I've been doing one of the reasons that we're doing this so late is I've been out there scouting with our scouts. I've been out looking at, I think it's a very important draft for our organization. We have a really good base, but we need to add a couple of top people here. And there's 2 ways to get them. You get them in free agency, but usually those guys are a little bit older, or you have to draft them. And we get an opportunity to draft 1, maybe 2 of those guys that could be really top players. and we have draft capital. Obviously, like I said, whatever happens in the lottery tonight will send us one or two directions in terms of where we're going to go. But we have lots of draft capital. We have lots of salary cap available to us if we use it or not. We looked at the free agency, last year versus what possibly this year. There's not a lot out there. As you'll see, July 1 may be a very quiet day for a lot of teams, actually. But I'm really excited about our young players. I'm excited for the opportunity that we have in the draft. I'm looking for hockey trades all the time. I think that's will be the biggest improvement with our team will be in hockey trades. Very similar to like what we did with Michael Bunting with Pittsburgh being a draft choice and a player type of situation. Similar to Anunen and Wedgwood. Those type of deals are the things that we're looking for. As I said, a limited free agency this year. We felt last year's class was much better. And like I say, we have lots of cap space, which is opportunity. A lot of times in the, you get before the draft and the team it goes to free agency or they go to the draft and they go, we got this young player popping. We want to move on from an older player. There'll be opportunities like that. That's where I think the salary cap will be an advantage to us. Very similar to how you got Ryan McDonough, for instance, a couple of years ago. We did, one of the things I did is, we talked about Ryan McDonough. His presence as a true leader was, sometimes you miss some of that, so you never know. You get a really good player who can fit a really good role. And Ryan, when he got picked up that way, was a really good fit here. And you saw it at the end of the last 2 years there.
All right.
I think that's all I got. I think that's all I got. I'm out of here.
We got to do questions now, though. So
Sure.
We'll go to Alex first. Katie, if you don't.
Just a quick one, so Brunette will be the coach next year, and then are the assistant coaches also all returning as well?
Well, at this moment, I have everybody returning. Now, could I change my mind? Yes. There's, as you see, there's a lot of people out there. I may look for a little different voice. Yeah.
In terms of assistant, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Robbie?
Barry, Jonathan Marcel had some public comments after the
Yeah.
season about the system, and clearly it needs to change moving forward. What was the process like, kind of talking through that, and what do you think needs to be adjusted? Excuse me, not system, style of play is what he said.
Well, I think, when you have an off season like we did, it's easy to throw out, the system. You got to have, like I said, there got to be the buy-in. It's easy to say, well, yeah, it didn't fit for me. Part of the process is you got to find a happy medium where it does fit, where your talents will fit really well into the system, and then you got to buy into the non-negotiables. The non-negotiables on a team, that's the responsibility of every guy in the team. So sometimes when you throw it out, I know Andrew, and I know I talked to Marchie, and I know Andrew's reached out to Marchie, that from that standpoint, they will get on the same page. And I'm not, I do know what Marchie said, and I'll keep that between me and him. But there's a give and take on both sides. There's certain talents. No one's a perfect player. No one's a perfect coach. No one's a perfect person. But you have to create an environment where there's understanding on both sides. And so to say, hey, this doesn't work. There's certain things about the way we played that Marchie would like to play a little differently, and so he voiced his opinion, I'm sure, on it, and he's talked to Bruno on it. Bruno's a smart hockey guy. He's going to do what's best for the group in the winning. So, but getting all that information is part of being a coach, is part of being to feel where your team is. As a coach, I made adjustments every year. Some of them were subtle. Some of them were massive. You change them based on your roster. Our roster could be a lot younger this year. you know, if a guy like Svechkov moves up and we put another young guy in the middle, then, you know, the plan hasn't changed. You know, I envision this team, you know, in terms of a young guy coming in this year, and you saw it last year a little bit at times. We ended up with, like, at the end of the year, I think it was like Forsberg and O'Reilly and Luke Evangelista, 2 veteran guys and a young player. You know, I would like to see that right through our roster this year. In the next year, it might be, you know, one line might have 2 veterans and 1 young guy, and then, you know, hopefully that because you're using some of the young guys, they're getting experience. You got 2 young guys and an older guy that fits in really well. But, you know, and that's sort of the blend that I was talking about. That's going to happen organically because of players aging out a little bit and young guys getting better. It's a fast league. It's a young league. And so the young guys are getting better all the time. And they're looser at times in terms of the way they play. But they're fearless, and they've got some really good skill sets. And we're going to have an opportunity we already have a really strong, deep base of prospects, but some of those guys that we can get at the higher end in a draft will really enhance that. And their path will be a lot quicker. So as I was telling our scouts, one of the difficulties that you do run into when you have a deep pool of guys, you got to make sure you don't have lots of duplicates, because then you got to peel guys off. They either go on waivers at a certain time, they time out. Young guys time out like old guys do. They time out, and then you either got to sign them for long term, and maybe the money's higher than you think that their ceiling is, and they end up on waivers. You know, we got a couple of first rounders off the waivers last couple of years because they timed out. And we're going to have to make quicker decisions. The portal, I don't even know how the junior and the college system is going to, you know, that has to be a CBA thing. So, but you don't know how the players, the agents, how they're going to use that to, you know, you see players moving all the time. It's going to have that effect on young players. And now maybe looking at, hey, you know, I'm part of the Predators. I'm drafted by the Predators, but I got a whole bunch of guys on the right side, and I'm a right winger, and maybe I can't fit there. So, you know, those decisions are going to come quicker. So how the landscape is right now, we still are in the exploratory stage of what's going to happen. And there's lots of theories out there.
John?
Barry, just following on Andrew, I know had a good first year, but given the results from this past season and, you know, the personnel on the roster, what sort of gives you the confidence to say he is a good young coach, and maybe if you could expand on what he needs to add to his tool belt?
Well, I think that's a good question, actually, John. Well, I think number one is he's able to, he has the experience at every level. I mean, he's played in the coast. He's played at every level. He's been part of management. He's been an assistant coach. He's been a head coach. He's been nominated, I believe, twice now for Coach of the Year nomination. I don't think anybody expected us to be in the playoffs the year before, just as no one expected us to be out of the playoffs like last year. He's a good coach because he knows the game really well. He's been a part of the game really well in every aspect. That he's a good communicator. I think he's a guy that you, as a player, would love to play for. I think if you go talk to our guys, they'll say, love Bruno. Okay, you love him, but we didn't win. So, you know, you got to love him more because you want him to be your head coach if you love a guy, you know. So our buy-in has to be complete, and be it a, you know, comments, you know, that, you know, I said, like, you know, do we have the right system? Every year you do a reassessment all the time. And I know there was adjustments during the year, but we never caught up. So, you know, was it right or wrong? We didn't make the playoffs. I felt that we should have been in the mix. I couldn't tell you if we should have been in the playoffs, but I knew we should have been in at least the mix to you know, in the wild card mix a little bit till the end, but we never got there. And it was very difficult because you always felt that you're so far away that you just couldn't, you missed the party, you're always late on something. So, but the things that we can clean up, the 5-on-5, our buy-in in key situations. I mean, we don't have to take offensive zone penalties when, we're up by a goal, or we just scored and we got momentum, or we just spent, a minute in our own zone. We can't afford the extra, too many men penalty that we had. Things like that are controllable. Things that don't take talent are controllable. And a lot of things that we did, they didn't take talent. They just took guts and commitment. Yeah. Well, I think just any time that you make adjustments, making sure that you get to the accountability factor right through your roster. It doesn't matter in terms of a player who's played 600 games or a player who played 6. There should be the accountability factor. Obviously, the guys that have long NHL careers or been in the league a long time have a longer rope. But in terms of the respect for all those guys, that has to be the same. I know that it's key with Andrew, but just making sure that we're all playing the right way all the time. And I didn't think we did enough of it. And that's an area where, like I said, sometimes we're all too nice. And I can be a nice guy, John, as you know, and but I can also be I know when I don't have to be a nice guy, and I don't have any problem with that.
Lauren,
Barry,
on the left.
hello. Hi, Barry.
Hello.
You said you believe the culture is still good.
Yeah.
How and why is that, given that you said things like trust, focus, and commitment were collectively lacking at times?
Well, at times, yes, but the good people. You have good people, and if you have good people, you're going to have a good culture. Good culture, it comes with what's tolerated. Our players, I think sometimes can be a little bit nice. I always say we were friends. If I was a good friend to you, if you were doing something that maybe wasn't within our group, I would probably, as a good friend, I would have no problem calling you out. You have friends that wouldn't call you out, or just as a teammate, sometimes wouldn't call you out. Sometimes they were a little too nice. But the culture is good. There isn't, there's a want to win. That's why I say the culture is good. There isn't really any people that have to worry about night in and night out. They don't lose any sleep. That players aren't taking care of themselves. All those type of things. That's not a problem. But I think like I said, the buy-in has to be. It comes with, with success. We didn't have any early success, so it made it very difficult to have a lot of buy-in. And towards the end of the year, when the roster got really lean, we had the buy-in. We just had a lean roster, playing some rosters that were a lot deeper than ours.
Barry, through this process, have you found that maybe you need to be a little more involved when it comes to coaching and helping Andrew through this process, or is there a balance where you want to stay out of his way and let him figure it out at the same time?
I think there's a balance. My job is to manage a team, not coach a team. I hire Andrew to coach the team, but I think leaning on me, I've always said to him, you can always lean on me, and I try to give him the confidence to make any decision that he needed to make, because it's very difficult when you get coached from above, because then you don't have the confidence. I would say if everybody's sitting in this room, if I said your boss is telling you what to write and how to do it, and that would take your confidence away. And that's not what you're hired to do. You're hired to have your own opinions and your own thoughts and all that. So it's very important that there's a balance. I can't go too far, but I can help. I do have know a little bit about that part of it. And I think we'll be on a continual talk through the summer and into the winter. But I always believe that the coach has to be himself. He has to be. That's why I hired him. Hired good people, let them do their job, and that's what I did. I hired Andrew, and he'll do a good job.
Yeah, Barry, without major changes in the coaching staff, without probably major changes on the roster, what gives you the confidence that the results are going to change and a lot of the buy-in and things you're talking about are going to happen?
Well, I'm good. I think the meetings have happened. The feel of the group. I must say the group has a chip on its shoulder, which isn't a bad thing. When you go into the year with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, I think you'll get a team that hopefully will respond in the right way.
Braden, back middle.
Barry, you've talked about your belief in Andrew Burnett. You've
Yeah.
also talked about having to change strategies throughout the course of,
Yeah.
of all this. How do you know and describe sort of when the right thing to do is to stick to your guns and your convictions versus knowing when you need to adapt to new situations?
Yeah. You always go with your gut. You always, to me, if people are willing to adapt and willing to be a part of something, then you don't need to change as long as they understand that, hey, we took a step back. We'll take a step forward here. And, that part of that, but then we are in a results based situation. We didn't get the results. So, we'll need to get some results early, no question. But I believe we will. And I believe we have good people. I believe we have some good young people. We have some veteran people. We'll have better years, and we should come out of the blocks a little bit better. Obviously Andrew and his staff are going through, the things that they had success with and the things that failed us this year. I've done the same thing.
Corey, back right. Hey, Barry, this may be too much into the future, but you got to look at Wood. You've seen some of what Molendyke can do. Is it your expectation that they win spots on the roster to start next season?
My expectation is that they'll compete for spots. It is too soon. But I'll be quite honest, Molendyke is pushed for a spot for probably the last two training camps. He's still playing. He has a good chance to win the Memorial Cup with Medicine Hat. I think there's probably only about 6 or 8 teams left in junior hockey, and he's part of one. And then you look at Matthew Wood. My expectations with Matthew coming out of college, they weren't that high because I knew it was college hockey and then going right into the NHL. It's a big jump, but he did very well in terms of the pace. His length was good in terms of he made those small little plays that more like an NHLer than say a college kid. And I was really impressed with him, and then his demeanor in terms of the meeting with him. You got a very focused player. He's a quiet, competitive guy. If you ever met Matthew, he is almost shy, but all his focus and all that is well placed. So it wouldn't surprise me because he's a good player.
Barry, I'm going to try and fit 2 into 1 here. The guys you got.
You're cheating.
I know. The guys you got last July, you
Yeah.
said earlier, no regrets about that. But how important is it for them to take their game to the level that you signed them to be? And then the follow-up is a lot of what you're talking here is
Yeah.
essentially preaching patience in a sport where there isn't a lot of it very often. How long does that go in the next season?
Well, I think, you look at a guy like both our guys, they were in our top 3 or 4 top 4 scorers on our team. And then you look at a guy like we bring up Marshy, and Marshy, he had 56 points. I'm going to top of my head, somewhere in that. Someone will correct me. Yeah, somewhere in there, 54, 56, somewhere in there. Look around the league, how many people have that many points? There's not as many as you think. So they fill a lot of those offensive gaps for us, him and Stammer. And I think they'll be able to maintain that. I don't expect career years for them because they're getting older, but I do expect productive years where they can, still produce at a decent level. Stammer and Marchie aren't going to produce like they did when they're, 28. They're going to produce a little bit, at a lower level, but at the same time, they're still going to produce, give us quality minutes, and they're going to be part of the usage of the young guys. You need some. You get a guy like Sveshkov who can, if he plays a lot of one-on-one, but he's starting to give up the puck a little bit more. But if you're going to give the puck up to someone, you want someone, give it to someone who can score. That's the thought process where we got to give some of these young players the tools that will complement them in the future. The tools to grow as a pro, which I think we've done that, and the tools on the ice so they can grow as a pro. So I think those guys can do that, and they have done that. We just got to do it better.
All right, Nick is next. Then, guys, I've got the mental list going in my head. We're going to try and get through as many as we can, just so you know.
Barry, just want to get a quick thought about Luke Evangelista. He's one of your key free agents this summer. Just a few other small guys as well, but wanted to get your thoughts on where you may stand with him. He mentioned how there's no rush to get a deal done. He's got the entire summer, basically. So just wanted your thoughts on him.
If it was up to me, I'd have the deal done right now. I've talked to his agent, and his agent, we're started the discussions. Obviously, Luke is one of the guys that we're going to have to get signed. The full intention to get him signed sooner rather than later. I'm just looking at my list of guys here. Obviously, Luke is a key young guy that we want to get signed. The other guys that we re-signed, Murray and Corona, Hader in the net, on defense. Obviously, Jeremy Lazon is a guy that he's coming back from basically missing a whole year. It's real key for us. I think we missed Losey just as we missed Yos. I mean, those are two identity pieces that we missed for a long time. We'll see where we stand with him as he gets back this year. But we're already talking a little bit with his agent. Obviously, the agents at the same time are trying to get a feel for the market, so they're slowing things down a little bit at times. And then for the most part, we've got a couple of decisions on our drafts, but really don't have a lot on our plate. It's going to be Luke and a couple of we'll say younger or non-established guys.
George, back right.
Hey, Barry. When you told Andrew he was coming back, I'm going to guess that he said, okay, level with me. What kind of leash am I on? And by the way, I'm going to cheat. I got a second question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The second one is 82 games season. Why did Marchessault feel the need to tell us what he should have been telling Andrew? And if there is great communications, then why hadn't that got settled?
Well, your first question, I talked to, we're going to have to go to one because I'll forget the second question all the time. With Andrew, I was not only Andrew, but all our coaches, what I felt that they needed to, reconnect and get everything in the right order, if you will. Sometimes it gets out of order. Your second question, I have no idea. I'm sure I know they did talk. That wasn't Andrew's a really good communicator with all that. Why Marchie said it in public, you have to ask him, because I can't answer a question that I didn't give. So I can't really answer that, but I know they did communicate that, and sometimes you say things that you just gets out and you guys jump on it and it goes crazy. So
Russell on the left by Katie.
Barry, you mentioned that there was some sort of paralysis by analysis going on there between the team's
Yeah.
existing leadership and then the new guys that came in last summer. How much do you think that sort of messed with the team's entire dynamic? And then do you feel like that's resolved at this point?
Well, I think, yeah, you get to spend time with people. I think you find out what you like or don't like about people. But yeah, I think there was a little bit of a stall. I mean, we had I thought we started off a training camp. We had a really strong training camp. I think anybody who was there, you could see it. There was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. And then we got off the slow start. I mean, the first game, I thought we handled Dallas really well. We hit 6 posts that night, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to score a lot, but we still got a lot of room to clean up stuff. But then we never really got off the schneid for 5 games, and now we started chasing it. And like I say, and then I thought the rest of we had a great start of the training camp, and then it sort of dwindled a little bit. Weather effects or whatever, I can't blame anything on that, but just thought we lost a little bit of momentum going in, and then the season started, and I thought we jumped back and we looked pretty good in that first game, but we didn't find that back in that enough. I think we hit the post in the last 1.6 seconds or whatever it was, and it goes in and it's a different result but we didn't. So it's in the past, so we got to look forward. Looking forward is all we can do. The last season is done. We learn from it as much as we can, build from it as much as we can, and to get excited about the future. The future's bright here. I mean, we've got a great fan base. We've got good young kids coming. We're in a real tough division, as you see every night right now with you look at we saw 2 great series in the last 48 hours. I mean, you look at, especially in the West, you look at Colorado, that's a really good team. And you look at Dallas, that's a really good team. They're out in the first round. That's almost mind boggling. You look at the St. Louis and Winnipeg, that series, there's 2 really good teams that the last 48 hours are out quickly, and you could argue that they could win the cup. So it's a bear in our division, in our conference. It's just there's good teams, and we're going to do our best to put our best team out there, but at the same time we have to create a young core so that we can be one of those teams. With our young core, the guys that we draft, the guys that are leading their team, other than the trade with Rantanen, the key guys for those teams are guys that they have drafted at a pretty high rate. All the teams that are in the going deep right now, McDavid, those type of guys are all high draft choices, and hopefully we get our swings now.
Chris in the back.
Hey, Barry. Talking about looking forward specifically,
Yeah.
the immediate forward, the next year, given your faith in Andrew, like you've professed, what is your measure for success with him and this team that will justify your decision to keep him?
Well, I think it's going to show a lot in the 5-on-5 play and the connection. To me, the indicators for how your team's going to do is always their 5-on-5 play, not your special teams. That's something that helps you win games for sure. But I think your measure of your team is your 5-on-5 play. Our ability to play on both sides of the puck on a very consistent basis. Our ability to play unified on a very consistent basis, 5-on-5, will be a big determining factor. Well, I go honestly. Everybody asks me when. I can tell you, I won a cup, and we didn't come together till about game 30. With that team. In the year previous, we won 2 years previous. We came together really quick and won the President's Trophy, and we didn't win a cup. So to give you a defined answer would be very difficult. But I'm hoping that the process sooner than later, for sure.
All right, Barry, been very accommodating. We're down to our final two. We'll go to John and then Alex.
You know, you're cutting into my first round scouts meeting right now.
Good. Yeah, Barry, to follow up on kind of the big three that you signed last off season. All three of those guys had been playing for their teams for several years previously. This was a first year, experience for a lot of them. How much do you expect, and how much do you need them to be, I guess, as invested, as committed as possible? Do you think there will be a difference in year two after all three of them came from different
Yeah, I do. I look at Brady Shea, for instance, was playing sort of a man-on-man defense for 7 years straight, and then all of a sudden, we were in a little bit more zone, if you will. It took him a while. I mean, there's a little bit of a delay mechanism that happens when you're not sure, or it doesn't come natural. I thought in the last half of the season, we had Brady Shea was a lot of nights he was the only NHLer that was regular NHLer that was playing on our defense for the last 20 games, and I thought he was really good and played outstanding for us. So, and it's hard because we weren't as deep in some areas. So, but you just take his impact in a night in and night out, it was pretty significant. So I'm hoping that that applies to all. I think in Marchie's case, for instance, sometimes you don't realize how much going from organization to organization impacts a person, because it has great value into their makeup of who they are and what they've done and what they've accomplished. I mean, Marchie didn't have his clothes, as a Vegas Golden Knight until game, 79. I watched how emotional he was, and how he valued his time in Vegas. You didn't realize how much it affected him until you saw it in real time, and it did. So he has that closure, hopefully, and with that closure, hopefully he's just a little bit there. And it's not that he wasn't there, but the closure allows you to say, you know what, I'm here, my feet are here now, and let's make the best of it. There's a reason that he's playing in the National Hockey League at a high level. He wasn't drafted high, but he's made impact in the game because he has that chip on his shoulder. So I'm hoping he has that chip on his shoulder. I know Stammer wants to be back.
Whew, that was Barry Trotz, an hour of Barry Trotz, like Cory Booker on the Senate floor, a filibuster from Barry Trotz, but a lot to digest there. We will react to what we heard from Barry Trotz coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. We want your reaction to at 615-737-1025. This is 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen live from Habitat for Humanity of Sumner County's 3rd annual Playhouse Project. We are out here on behalf of our friends at Pella Windows and Doors, the Nashville Predators, among other many incredible organizations out here doing great work for our community. Speaking of the Predators, that was a mouthful from Barry Trotz. A roughly 30-minute opening statement before taking questions. A lot to sift through there, and we will attempt to do so with what we have left on our program. The most newsworthy nugget: Andrew Brunette will return as Predators head coach next season, despite the team's 30th place finish in the standings. And it's because of that 30th place finish that the Predators have the 3rd best odds to win the NHL draft lottery, which is tonight at 6 o'clock. You can watch it on ESPN. We will have live coverage as well, starring Chase McCabe, Willie Donick, and Hal Gill. All right, gentlemen, I need your thesis statements. We listened to Barry Trotz speak for almost an hour. We'll keep it to Andrew Brunette specifically, because that's the thing that most people want to discuss. Willie Donick, your thesis statement on what you heard from Barry Trotz about Andrew Brunette.
I feel good that I have known Barry Trotz long enough to be able to sift through the long train of thought that you get with him often. You mentioned how long he took before he even started taking the questions. You have to really focus in to get the themes. This is what I think it came down to. Barry Trotz is a coach. That is his DNA. Most of his life in hockey has been as a coach, not as a GM. So I think he really is looking back on his early days as a young head coach when David Poile stuck with him through the tough times, through the expansion era, which was 5 years. They went through 5 years of zero success. And David Poile was patient with him. I think that is the overriding thing. He believes Andrew Brunette is going to be a really good coach for a really long time. And so this is the quote that got me. He said, a lot of times in this league, it's a crutch that management does just to fire the coach. You have a bad year, fire the coach. Things don't go wrong for half a season, fire the coach. Change it. And there's a lot of, and Adam, you've done statistics that shows sometimes that is what a team needs. Barry Trotz is going against the grain. Why? Because he was a coach. So he says he needs to add tools to his tool belt, meaning Andrew Brunette. And I think it's fair to say Andrew Brunette has not gone through tough times as a young head coach. Mostly, relatively speaking, in the regular seasons, he's had a lot of success. Not a lot of dragging a team through the mud that's really struggling. This was a new experience.
Helped the Panthers win the President's Trophy when he took over for Joel Quenneville early that season. And, of course, the success that the Predators had last season as well.
So I think it's like you think when you're a young coach, you've got all the answers. I've got it. This is how we need to play. And not the nuanced, I might have to tweak things to go with this particular roster. So I think he said, Barry Trotz said, I'm not going to use it as a crutch and take the easy way out. I want to stand behind him, and I want us to figure this all out together.
Derek, your thesis statement on what you heard from Barry Trotz regarding Andrew Brunette.
Oh, man. I think first for me, he said it plainly. He said, listen, you're in a partnership with the players. That's what it's about. And you got to understand, how to coach, when to do certain things. There were several things that he said. One thing that really stuck out to me, and I sort of paraphrased it. And we talked about this too early on in the season. He talked about guys looking instead of leading. Guys, it was like you were paralyzing
That was
yourself.
the word he used,
Yeah,
paralyzed.
exactly, because you were looking at the new guys thinking that the new guys were looking at you. We talked about this earlier in the season. And what did I say? One side deferring to the other, and neither side is getting things done. That's what it boiled down to me, was a group of guys coming in, didn't want to step on any toes,
too nice,
being too nice.
A mutual admiration.
Exactly.
Hey, Stammer, really have enjoyed watching you play. Well, hey, Roman, you've been a great player too. Wow, we're cool. We're on the same team now. And there wasn't
enough
Right.
leadership. Not
Yeah.
to say they didn't have the leadership on the team, but when you bring in guys of that caliber already with guys that have done well, that have been leaders, you don't want to lead the way because you don't want to step on anybody's toes, because they were leaders on their former team. So they come here. You don't want to say too much to them because you feel, well, they've earned the right.
Yep.
So you're
and I
paralyzed.
don't you think Andrew Burnett had some of that too?
Exactly, absolutely. So you're not able.
Too nice.
You're not able to lead the way you need to lead the team, and I think that's
Nobody
what
was willing
Barry-
to be tough.
Exactly.
Take the bull by the horns and say, guys,
And
we got to
that's-
get this right.
And that's one of those tools that Barry's talking about. You got to have that tool to be able to stand up in your room and saying, this ain't right. We need to get it straight. Regardless who's on, regardless if it's the new guys or the guys that have been here. There wasn't enough. I'm not saying there was none, but it doesn't seem like there was enough accountability in that locker room. Not to say that they didn't have any, but it's hard when you're bringing in new guys that were leaders on their team and you're trying to find a way to lead with all these other guys coming in. It basically canceled each other out, and y'all were a Maybach.
Okay.
Y'all were a Maybach with no steering wheel. Seriously, you were a Maybach. The outside looked good, the inside looked good. You had the players look nice, but you ain't had no steering wheel. You didn't know you were fighting amongst one another, not literally fighting amongst one another, but you were fighting amongst one another with, the new guys coming in, the old guys being there, and the admiration that Willie talked about, and not wanting to step on toes. So y'all, in a sense, y'all fighting with one another. And like Barry said, you paralyzed yourself, and now you're on a course that you don't want to be on.
And Barry Trotz, in referring to Andrew Burnett, said, like a young player, it takes some time to develop, and you don't give up on that young player. So he doesn't want to give up on Burnett as a young coach. But you could tell that there were lots of questions, multiple questions in that news conference. Essentially, how long of a leash are you going to give Andrew Burnett?
Yes.
Because if this team starts 0-5 again, whoo boy, it's going to get loud around here. So
I think it will be allowed from day one.
Agreed.
Next year. And I
But-
think he knows that going in.
Right.
He knew that if he made this decision, that would be the case.
Right. So I admire all of my colleagues. George Plaster asked that question. I think Chris Harris asked that question. Multiple people asked some form of the question, how long are you going to give Andrew Burnett at the start of the season to show that you made the right choice? And that is something that is going to hang over Burnett's head at the start
Yes.
of the season.
And I think in particular, the first thing people are going to look for is, will they have the full commitment and buy-in, particularly from the three guys who were signed last July 1st, right? And whether that's fair or not, I think that is what everybody's going to look to answer that question. Are you going to see a better Brady Shea, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault out of the gate? As much as Barry Trotz is trying to make it about, well, the next phase too is the younger players have to take a step forward. You got to have a rebound from UC Saros. You got to have a rebound from Roman Josi. All of these other things. But I think especially with Marchessault, the how does Marchessault play out of the gate? How does Burnett feel like he's getting along? These are important things that have to look better, or else the heat's going to be up right from day one.
Let's get to your reaction. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland is on our phone line. Adam, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Dude, I think it's so stupid. I did not expect
Adam, you
to
there?
be-
Here you go.
Yeah, I did not expect to be like irritated by a press conference like that, but I really am. Like, we are not Chicago and we're not San Jose. We have veterans. Like, a roster like this shouldn't be bottom feeders, dude. And he's preaching like, oh, you just got to be patient. But, like, you need to be accountable. Like, you have a blind spot for coaches, man, and we see it. Like, it's ridiculous. You sell us on that all you want, but you're just doubling down with him, man. I think it's delusional. I think it's the first time I've been kind of disappointed. Like, I'm shaky with this guy now because I'm like, the way you're talking, it's like I was a coach. Like, dude, I get it. Like, you need to hold him accountable. I hated it. I hated every second of that.
Thank you for the call, Adam. One texter says three takeaways, I should say, from Barry. Number one, what's the point in going to get veteran all-stars to just tell them to conform to Burnett's system instead of what makes them great? Two, if the players aren't committed to the system, why keep the coach? Three, why is Barry acting like last season didn't happen? No real changes, but randomly expected to be better next year. Really confused me as a fan. Third worst record in the NHL isn't just an accident. And I've talked about this before, gentlemen, about Barry Trotz returning to Nashville. He leaves 10-ish years ago, wins a Stanley Cup as a coach with Washington, goes to New York, coaches the Islanders, comes back here to succeed David Poile as GM. And there were a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings about Barry Trotz. A lot of Predators fans, understandably so, have warm and fuzzy feelings about Barry Trotz. Then he gets here, he makes moves that work, the team exceeds expectations to make the playoffs. The warm and fuzzies, they keep adding up for Barry Trotz. I am fascinated by this past season, the reaction to the news conference, and how Predators fans feel about Barry Trotz as a GM, because it feels like that honeymoon period is over. And I just think that since it's Barry Trotz as the GM and what Barry Trotz has meant to the city, to this organization, I find how those feelings have shifted to be quite fascinating.
I think he is banking on the young. He has always said this, Barry Trotz, that long term, for it to work, the young players have got to end up being what makes this team go. He knew that when he took over, that the shelf life of Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, and the three veterans he signed, Ryan O'Reilly, would be in that group as well. There's only a certain amount of shelf life you have with those guys. You're hoping to thread the needle, which is used many times. So they're going to sink or swim, I think, with the young players. And I don't know if they can thread that needle in time to have enough success for Andrew Brunette. And as you put it, Adam, I think the honeymoon part, right? Will the honeymoon still be going on, or will they be having enough success so that everybody's satisfied with the direction? Because they're going to get this top 5 pick. This kid's going to be 18 years old, right? I don't know if it's instantly going to happen. It's going to take a few years. But it's a really good question about the honeymoon part, because I think Barry Trotz, everybody was thrilled to have a new perspective with a guy that has a track record here in Nashville, a very, very respected hockey person, beloved in this community, but it's tested when you don't have success.
Ricky on our text line says, like I correctly predicted last week with the New York Rangers coaching hire, I'm going to predict this is going to come back and bite Barry in the butt. They have a win-now team. Their core is in the 30s. Yes, they have a great farm system, but it wasn't built for the farm system with these free agents. It sounded like excuses were being made. It sounded like the players were frustrated, and he didn't want to get out. He didn't want to get out. Not a good look. Not a good press conference, in my opinion. And I love Barry as a general manager and as a coach and as a person, which is sort of what I was talking about.
But I mean, the honeymoon
people want to see him succeed.
Yeah,
right?
but the
They
honeymoon
like
is
Barry
over.
Trotz.
The honeymoon is over. It is. But I'm not saying they're sitting here and they want Barry fired. I'm not saying that. But the honeymoon phase is over. Now we're about to get into this hot and heavy, especially this offseason. And if this thing doesn't start off right, there are going to have to be some changes made. And that's just the way it is, because you don't want the fan base to get to a point where they start looking at you to being replaced. And I'm talking about Barry.
Yeah.
You don't want the fan base to get to that. Hopefully it doesn't. I think from my experience, albeit another sport, but from my experience, usually that second year with that new group of guys from the previous year, things tend to get better, because now there's a full season of understanding one another. Even though the season may have gone awry, you still learn how to play with one another, and you can carry that into the next season. I think that's one of the reasons why Barry, because again, listen, don't make no mistake, Barry has to wear this too, regardless if Bruno makes it or not. Barry has to wear this. Mm-hmm. So he wants it to work just as bad as anybody else. So my thing is, he feels that another offseason, a full off season with the guys, this should look like a different team than what they looked like last year.
Willie, quickly, you had a point you wanted.
Well, Barry Trotz knows what it's like to be on the hot seat, and you
Yes.
you can reference your time in Washington when he was the coach. The year they won the Stanley Cup, he was on the hot seat the entire season,
and they almost lost in the first round.
They almost lost in the first round, and there were 2 or 3 times during the regular season where it looked like he might be on sort of his last sliver of career. He made it through. He still didn't come back the next year because he knew that his leash was still very, very short. So he's used to this. So if the honeymoon is over, it's not something he hasn't gone through before.
615-737-1025. We have a lot of reaction to get to. We will get to you next. 615-737-1025. Willie Dunick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 the game. Let's go right to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bob is in Antioch. He wants to react to Barry Trotz's news conference. Bob, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, guys. I like Trotz quite a bit. I've got a lot of respect for him. But one thing about the press conference really worried me. He was rambling quite a bit at the beginning, and I know that he takes a long time to answer questions and get his point across. But he seems similar to Brunette at various times this season in that he didn't really seem to have a lot of confidence. He didn't project a lot of confidence to me. And there were times this year when I felt like Brunette looked like he was overwhelmed. Did any of you all detect any sense of Trotz being sort of overwhelmed during that press conference? But one of his major themes for optimism seems to be hoping that they won't be as bad as they were this year because this was about as bad as they could be. That just did not project a lot of confidence. I'm curious about your take.
Thanks for the call, Bob. And one thing that we all love about Barry Trotz, especially in our profession, Barry Trotz is incredibly engaging. He loves to talk. We like to listen. He is a great interview. But Willie, you and I were talking about this during the break. Sometimes Barry's long-windedness can give off the impression that maybe he's not as sure about what he's talking about as he actually is. Like when it comes to articulating the plan for the team, that opening statement went all over the place. It was sort of like a train of thought. He was just following the train of thought. And I think that can give off the impression when it's not succinct. This is my plan. Point A, point B, point C. It can give off the vibe that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I think that's been a trait of his ever since I've known him. And I saw his first introductory press conference in 1997. I happened to be there. I think he wants so badly to tell people and show the passion that he has and how much he wants to fix this, that he does go into so much detail that he ends up going off of the track of the original question.
Yeah, we get bogged down by the details.
Right. And so I think that's what we're getting a lot of reaction from on the text line and the callers. He wouldn't have lasted this long with this much success in the league if he wasn't much better behind the scenes at that part of it, right? Whether or not he can bring it across to the audience when he's trying to share it in a media setting.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Derek. Before we
No,
go to the next
I
caller.
just think he's a storyteller.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barry wants to tell the story why they didn't do well, and we just want the cliff notes. Seriously, we just want the cliff notes. And it may sound like, well, he's just like he really don't know. No, but he's telling you the story.
Yeah, he's really wanting to tell you the whole story.
He's not. Barry's one of those guys, and we need more of these guys in the world. We need more of these guys in the world. Barry's one of those guys that if you ask him what's wrong, he's going to tell you. Like, you got a minute?
Yeah.
Sit down. If you
I'll
really
tell
want to
you.
know, sit down. I got a minute to tell you. He's one of those guys.
There'll be more than
he's
a minute.
Not,
but yeah.
he's not a cliff note guy,
No.
especially when he's talking about, I believe, something that he has a vested interest in, something that he's passionate about, which is the team.
Let's go to Brian in Mount Juliet on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Brian, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, it's Ryan, not Brian. I don't know how the confusion got, but I'm gonna take a different approach.
Sorry,
to
Ryan
everyone
from Mount Juliet.
No, you all good. I'm gonna take a different approach. Usually, I'm agreeing with all the negatives, but I'm gonna take the positive out of this. You look at teams like Vegas a couple years ago before they won their cup. They had a bad season. They bounced back. You look at the Devils this year. They had a bad season last year. They bounced back. You look at a lot of these teams that bounce back the next year because they go out and they score big and fancy, and it doesn't come together. But towards the end of the year, it all comes together like they were hoping to. And you saw at the end of the year, Dan Coe started getting on the roll. The team started getting on the roll. They're pissed off. They make the playoffs. Marchessault said it best when he did Special Live, his Special Live. Vegas missed the playoffs. They were mad about it going into next year. They made a statement really loud, really fast, that they're not playing around this year. I think that same message is going to go through. Coaching staff, I think Bruno's fine. I'd really like to get High Note back because I think he was a good player on team mention, remember? Get team going when they were down. But we'll see what happens. And also, can I say one thing about the draft for tonight?
Sure.
I hope San Jose wins. I really do. Because San Jose's GM has already come out and said that if they win the draft lottery, they are willing to trade the first overall pick. So Barry, this might be the chance for Barry.
Okay.
Trotz
Well, thank you for
of
the call,
year.
Ryan. Thank you for the call, Ryan. So let's use his example of Vegas. Vegas, who is playing in the second round of the playoffs, they'll take on the Edmonton Oilers. In their 8-year history, they have missed the postseason one time in 2021, 2022, and they barely missed the playoffs, unlike the Predators, who missed the playoffs by about 30 points. The Golden Knights barely missed the playoffs. They had 94 points. The following season, they had 111 points and won the Stanley Cup. So I think that's a good point by Ryan. But the Golden Knights did not have this type of drop-off. That would be my counter argument, that the Golden Knights did miss the playoffs. They were upset. They won the Stanley Cup the following year, but they were not in the position that the Predators were in, plummeting down the NHL standings. I understand what he's saying. I would just offer that counter argument.
I think there's a lot of teams that can have a bad year and then bounce back. The question is, when you slip this low, and we can go back through and see what the biggest fluctuation would be from, I think they had 99 points 2 years ago to 60, whatever this year. Can they get back up into the 95, 100-point range that you need to be in the playoffs? Another thing that Ryan hit, there are two things that I think were sort of not emphasized, but he said that I think are themes to look for. Obviously the head coach will be back, Andrew Brunette. He said, though, there might be a new voice on the staff. I think Alex Doherty followed up. You mean on an assistant coach? He didn't go into much detail on that, but I did get the impression they want to add an ingredient there. He also said that free agency this year is not going to be the place that you're going to see teams spending a lot of money. There are not a lot of really good free agents out there that are the answer to your problems. So he said hockey trades. So I think that would be something to look for. Take some of the draft capital that you have, maybe some of the prospects that you have, and see if you can wheel and deal for a hockey trade to try to add the right tweak or two, because you cannot come back with the same exact lineup that you came back with this year. There have to be some tweaks. Free agency is not the way you're going to do it. You're going to have to do it through hockey trades.
Let's get to some texts on our text line driven by Wilson County under.com. Nate says, Barry said multiple times that Brunette is a good coach. I'm not saying Brunette isn't a good coach. It just made it sound like Barry was trying to talk himself into or convince himself that Brunette is a good coach. One texter says, when you just keep rambling about you have no confidence, after the 38th place finish, I think the proof is there. He, meaning Trotz, is overwhelmed. Will in Clarksville, we traded David Poile for David Poile 2.0. One texter says, I had a lot of patience with this team this season. This press conference convinced me that there may not be a plan, or at least a coherent plan. This is the most out I've been on the team in a while. So I appreciate Ryan in Mount Juliet calling in and offering the positive take. I think that was a well-reasoned idea, but generally speaking, Derek, and I'm not surprised by this because the team had a terrible season. A lot of Predators fans don't seem to be buoyed by what they heard from Barry Trotz, which I understand, again, because the team lost quite a bit. But a lot of the reaction skewing negative, at least in the immediate reaction to what we heard from Barry Trotz.
Well, I mean, it's understandable. The fan base, the expectation, and even Barry talked about it. The expectation coming in may have been too unrealistic. I mean, he understood, what it could potentially be, and he even said it in his opening presser when all of this went down during the summer, him bringing those three guys in. But I think the fan base, regardless of how he may have, gave the message, the fan base, what they're looking at is something different. They're looking at a team with goal scorers that had 40, three guys that had 40 goals coming in.
Yep.
And they're looking at the guys that were here already. They understand what you said, Barry, about, hey, listen, we got to taper expectations. But in their mind, they're like, no, we should be a playoff team. And more than just that, we should be competing for the Stanley Cup. So he expressed all of that, and he understands. where this team was, where they could potentially go. I don't think it's because what some of the texters are saying is it's almost like it's a rudderless ship. Like they don't know which direction. Now, I did say because of the two dynamics that were going on with the current players and then the new players, that sort of paralyzed them, like Barry said, and they were without a steering wheel. And it was their own doing.
Well, and I would say the steering wheel too, as a team, he did say it. If you again are able to sift through all of the detail.
There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
He did at one point say, here is what the problem was. Number one, they did not defend well enough as a team. You have to defend better in this league or you're going to get beat. I don't care how talented your goalie is. I would say that Jordan Binnington's a good example of this year's Blues team. Binnington had a good year. The Blues defended way better this year than they have the last few years since they won the Cup. And so I think you see how little they discussed UC Saros today. That tells you it's how they defend is a big thing. And then in particular, 5-on-5. They were brutal. That's the steering wheel to me.
Yes.
5-on-5, they were outscored, I think, by 50 goals. 50. That is the guts of the team. Special teams weren't bad. 5-on-5 was awful. And defending is a big part of that. To me, that is where the answers have to lie.
I think Joel from Woodbury, I think we should end the show on this because I think he's exactly right. Joel from Woodbury on our text line says, fans are fans. Preds win the draft lottery tonight. Everything will be positive. And we shall see the NHL draft lottery starts at 6. We will have coverage of that featuring Willie Donick, Chase McCabe, and Hal Gill. You can also watch it on ESPN at 6 o'clock. Programming note, Sean Henry, Predators CEO, joined Jared Stillman on Stillman & Company today at 5 o'clock. So Sean Henry on with Jared Stillman at 5 o'clock. That'll do it for us today. Stillman & Company coming up next.
Be loved, love your people. Have a blessed, safe, wonderful Monday. Peace.